Sisters and brothers, the gospel today, Jesus predicts his own suffering. There are two kinds of sufferings. The first, the unnecessary suffering. This kind of suffering is where one imposes on others by selfishness. This kind of suffering is also one bring about upon himself or herself through negligence or ignorance. For example, if you have a toothache, because you are afraid of the needle, you do not want to seek help from a dentist. Instead, you use all kinds of means to keep the pain away, but the pain will always be there. So this is the unnecessary suffering, avoiding and not facing the suffering. As a result, it will not bring peace, joy, growth, and life. The second type, the necessary suffering. When you are trying hard to accept your limitations, admitting your weaknesses, and trying to improve it. For example, if you try to give up a harmful or bad habit for the good of yourselves and others, this kind of suffering or pain or sacrifice will produce fruits, peace, joy, growth, and life, and grow in faith and will draw you closer to God. Hence, in the gospel today, Jesus is speaking of this necessary suffering. We know and believe that through his suffering and death, he himself will bring forth life for himself as well as each one of us, his followers. Hence Jesus said, anyone who loses his life for my sake will find it. So in order to find life, we have or must lose ourselves, our lives for the sake of Jesus Christ, who is now asking each one of us to carry our own cross. The cross is our sacrifice, sufferings, and dying to ourselves. But I believe no one liked or loved the cross. Ask yourself this question. Is there anyone liked or loved the suffering? So my dear brothers, in today's gospel, Jesus continued to say, if anyone wants to be a follower of mine, let him renounce himself and take up his cross and follow me. Why the cross? And look at the cross. Because through the cross, which is also representing the Father's love through his Son in the Spirit to each one of us. So cross is a symbol of God's love for us. Jesus himself also said, when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all people to myself. Hence, we should love others with this kind of love. If there isn't any sacrifice, self-offering, suffering, death, there is no true love. But again, I believe nobody likes or loves the cross because it involves sacrifice and death. In the gospel today, it also tells us that St. Peter does not like the cross too. Last Sunday, in the gospel, if you still can remember, Peter said of Jesus, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And immediately, Christ made him the leader of the church. Christ called him the rock and built the church upon this rock. Christ gave Peter the authority to forgive. And today, Christ called Peter Satan, an obstacle to his path. Get behind him. What went wrong? Peter might have failed to profess and acknowledge that Jesus is a Christ, Son of the living God, but Peter, his faith is not strong enough to accept the cross, the suffering, and death. Both the passage, the Gospel of last Sunday and this Sunday, present to us a very important point, because it is the first time the apostle, especially Peter, professed Jesus is Christ, Son of the living God, and immediately is also the first time that Jesus prophesied his own destiny. He was destined to go to Jerusalem and suffer grievously at the hands of the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and to be put to death and to be raised on the third day. Sisters and brothers, Peter did not like what Jesus had just said. Thus, Peter started to demonstrate with Jesus. This was big because Peter was fearful of walking the path of suffering and wanted to stop Jesus from doing so. Peter wanted glory without a cross. Hence, there is the desire of the apostles, not accepting the cross, wanting the glory. And I believe it may also be our desire, not accepting the cross, but wants the glory. We desire to grow in faith, but without the crosses. But Jesus did not tone down the message just to please Peter, as well as each one of us. He continued to present the hard truth and say, if anyone wants to be his followers, let him or her renounce himself or herself and take up the cross daily and follow him. Jesus himself has shown us the great example, renouncing his own life, take up the cross, follow the will of the Father. Today, Jesus is inviting each one of us to follow him authentically and fearlessly. Let us take Jesus as our model and pattern our whole life on his, even to the point of picking up our crosses courageously and following him wherever he leads us. Amen.